Hey guys, today I'm just going to review the possible trades for all the teams in the league that could get Jimmy in a trade. So of the 29 other teams in the league, I've gone through and looked at those that are challenging and don't need his services. So Boston, Golden State wouldn't need him. Pacers have their own, and so Nuggets have their own shooting guards of the future. And Milwaukee wouldn't want to mess with their chemistry. Plus, there's not a real chance for them to get him. Then ruled out the other teams who don't have the ability to make the trade due to their cap restrictions. For instance, Lakers, with all the one and done deals that they've just signed, none of them are available at the current time. When the December trade deadline or the change of dates, when 1 year contracts can be renegotiated, then that could be a possibility. But Jimmy's long gone by then. Then Knicks said that they're not willing to bypass their options and get rid of any of their free agents. Consider their players, considering they can get him in free agency. The Bulls and Dallas don't really have the possibility to do it either. So that leaves us with the following teams. So quick review on most of them, and then we'll look at who's in the actual running. So first one, Miami's definitely in the running. Hassan and Richardson in a Luol Deng Jimmy Butler trade. Review that later. The Nets are definitely in the hunt, and one of Jimmy's named priority teams. Sixers are in the hunt too. They're looking to get the services. They missed out on getting a marquee player in free agency in summer, so this is their opportunity. Jazz are an interesting team. Jazz could really do with using Jimmy in their team. Joe Ingles just signed a contract, 13 mil a year, and thanks to Boston, Jay Crowder's on still one of the best contracts in the NBA with 2 years left at only 7 mil. He far outweighs that for his contract, but that's an unlikely trade scenario. Cavs, they'd love to have Jimmy to go with Kevin Love, keep them in playoff contention for another year after LeBron's left. But there's no way Minnesota want Tristan Thompson, and C.D. Osman hasn't really shown his value yet as a young player. But so that's not really an option, as much as the Cavs would love that. The Hawks should be looking to get some experience, just like Minnesota. The Hawks should get him in just for his locker room presence, although that's taken a bit of a hit at the moment, considering Tibbs brought him in to be a presence amongst the young guys, and it hasn't really worked out. But let's put that down to Wiggins. So Jimmy would be a massive asset here, not just on the court, but definitely off the court. Help Trae Young out and the other young players. To make that happen, then they'd be giving up Bazemore. Yeah, Jimmy's a definite upgrade on that, but they'd have to give one of the young players. Taurean Prince would probably be the likely candidate in this scenario, not only salary matching wise, but also it's not likely that any of their current rookies, as in Trae Young or Kevin Huerter or John Collins, is looking for a bit of a breakout season in his second year. So sorry, Spellman was the other one. It wouldn't be real likely for that to happen. Should the Hawks do it? Yeah. Is it likely to happen? Probably not. Here's an interesting one I threw around with Detroit. Detroit's best trade would be that whale of a contract that they've given to Blake Griffin, $32 million a year for a guy that's been injury prone throughout his career. Let's say he plays at his all-star level for Detroit, which he didn't at the end of last year. Then does he deserve 32 mil, or is he playing to a 32 mil? Probably not. I would throw this trade around because I like Detroit, and I'd hate to see them for the next 4 years looking at that contract and not having any cap room to play with or to go after free agents. Does Minnesota want Blake Griffin? In this scenario, trading Jimmy, getting off the Luol Deng contract? Maybe they do. So Detroit, but are Detroit going to throw this carrot? Probably not. So that one's an ideal. The Magic, they're interesting. They've got a decent. They're starting to free up some cap space and some room. Their books are looking pretty tidy now. The deal that they could do here would be Fournier. On his 17 mil a year for 3 years. Minnesota would then get they'd get a downgrade in their shooting guard position with Jimmy in this Jimmy trade. Fournier is still a good shooting guard, but not the Jimmy level. So they'd have to sweeten that with a young player. Jonathan Isaac would be the guy in this scenario, considering they just drafted Mo Bamba. And both of them play a similar role. But from the summer league and from all information coming out of Orlando, the Bamba Isaac may play together on the court, and that'd be some massive length to go along with Vucevic and Gordon. There's some big, but they do have an abundance of power forwards, so you never know. Maybe that could be a trade. I'm going to say a no, only because I think they like Isaac. But would Minnesota like it? I dare say that they'd take that deal. New Orleans would be someone else that in need of a shooting guard of Jimmy's talent. In this scenario, to make the numbers work, would be the Moore and Nikola Mirotic would have to be shipped here. That would match their 20 mil salary. Most other scenarios didn't really work with the numbers and players in a trade unless you brought in a third team. New Orleans would look formidable with Holiday or Drew Holiday and Jimmy Butler as their backcourt. That would just be lockdown defense. And then you put Randall, AD in the front court. In that's a real good starting five for the Pelicans. But is this trade likely to happen, considering Mirotic is on a 1 year himself, and Moore's not really young sweetener in this scenario? Then it's not likely the Timberwolves, unless a draft pick was included, and New Orleans wouldn't be interested in that either. So that's probably a no-go. Straight up no here. Phoenix, this again, like Atlanta, bringing in Jimmy's experience and vet presence and work ethic into the Suns' young roster would be a definite bonus. So on and off court, to make it happen, TJ Warren would be the odd man out. Even though he's on a decent contract, and to make it happen, they'd have to throw in someone young. With the shooting guard, with Booker currently their go-to man, their franchise player who plays a shooting guard, he would have to move to point guard, which they don't even have a point guard at the moment, or a legit one. So Booker and Butler in the playing the guard positions. Josh Jackson's not really the position there when you've got the other two, so he would be the odd man out. Is this likely to happen? Josh Jackson's on his second year only, the number 4 draft from 2017-18 season. I would say in 12 months' time, after, depending on what Josh Jackson does, then maybe that's a possible scenario, but they would definitely be giving him another year, especially since the uptick in his performance after the All-Star break last year. I don't know. Clippers were Butler's preferred destination, but that means nothing considering he's not a free agent yet. To make it straight swap And considering Minnesota and the Clippers are vying for that 6, 7, well, 6 is probably optimistic, 7, 8th playoffs position, Minnesota wanting to make the Clippers better? No. So Jimmy Butler going to the Clippers, they'd want to get some substantial things back from them. In this scenario here, although it says in the analysis at the bottom there, Minnesota just got 12 wins worse and Clippers got 6 better. When you bring in Gallinari and Tobias Harris for Jimmy and Luol Deng, I see that as pretty neutral. Minnesota would then have to move Wiggins to the shooting guard position, so they would then have a lot of length in their rotation. Plus, you've got Taj Butler is still in there. Taj Gibson, sorry, to go with Cat. So they'd have some size. Is this one likely to happen? No, simply because Minnesota doesn't want to make Clippers better. They are getting off of that contract of Luol Deng, though, but then they get in the whale of the contract of Gallinari. So I would say that's a no. To make this happen, they would need to bring in a third team. So Phoenix have been reportedly chasing Patrick Beverley as one of their preferred guard options, considering they don't have a point guard at the moment. So Patrick Beverley would go from the Clippers to the Suns. Suns would have to give up something, and in this scenario here, they would give up Bender to match the salaries. Plus, he hasn't really shown the promise of his draft position. I think he was drafted number 6 in the 2016-17 draft. Hasn't really shown much uptick, although they did get rid of Marquise Chris as to Houston in the summer, so Bender's numbers should go up this season. But here, the Clippers would get Jimmy, and they would ship out Beverly and Harris, and Minnesota would get Bender, so a young guy still on his rookie contract, Tobias Harris on his 1 year, $14.8 million, who's a quality player as well. This is kind of win-win-win across the board. Are the Suns happy with a 1 year deal for Beverly and for Bender? Probably not. So here there would be needed. Would a second round draft pick work? So Clippers may have to give up a second round pick to make that one work. So yeah. Anyway, I'll give that one a tick. Toronto's the next one up. In this scenario here, they look straight up. You'd say there's no way Toronto's going to give up Kyle Lowry for Jimmy Butler. But if you look through the numbers, that Jimmy Butler a better player than Kyle Lowry? Different positions, different attributes. I would rate him as a higher player. Plus, you've got depth at the point guard position that Toronto's got with the young players. They've just signed Van Fleet again, extended his rookie deal, and they've got there was another player, Dallin Wilson, I think his name was, as another backup point guard. If in this scenario here, if they've got Kawhi, if they can, and Jimmy's on the same with 1 year with a player option in his next year, here they may as well go for it. I'd love to see the Raptors go for this. Their starting 5 would then look like Fred Van Fleet, run the point with Jimmy at shooting guard, Kawhi Leonard, Giannis Valanciunas, and Pascal Siakam would come into their starting rotation in the point guard position. Still remember they've got Serge Ibaka on his 21 mil and 23 next year. Point guard, power forward. Plus you've got the depth that they've always had with Norman Powell, Danny Green, CJ Miles, Dallin Wright. Greg Munro's the backup for Valanciunas. So they've got lots of depth there. And this would be a very good starting 5. Probably enough to get over Boston for the top seed in the East, or at least match it. I think, and in the scenario that if Kawhi does leave and Jimmy does leave, if you're left with Kyle Lowry's $33 million in 2019 and nobody else to play around him, then you may as well have blown it up So here you don't really lose out considering you've got the depth in the point guard position. So I like this. Plus you have only $80 million in cap space if you've got rid of Kyle Lowry's contract this year. So that's a win-win, I believe. So I'll tick that definitely. Houston Rockets and Daryl Morley. If a superstar comes on the trade block, then he's always sniffing around. Here, the Rockets would be awesome if they could get Jimmy Butler. It would be amazing. To do it, their depth gets a massive hit. Eric Gordon, who's Sixth Man of the Year, was it 2 or 3 times, and PJ Tucker would be the numbers would fit for that. So that's 20. That matches the 20 mil of the incoming Jimmy Butler trade. But is that enough for Minnesota to want to pull the trigger on that? I don't know. It's PJ Tucker and both of them are getting on. Eric Gordon, 13 mil to replace Jimmy Butler as a shooting guard. We'll wait and see on that one. I would say no, but to make it happen, you could bring in the Kings. Ideally, Minnesota want to get off the Googie Deng contract, not the Dang contract that LA wanted to get off. The Googie Deng contract there would then go to the Kings. Googie Deng is decent backup center, which they have plenty of with Willie Cauley-Stein and LaBelle. The Bissier, they've got plenty of depth in the center position already. Then here, the Kings would get Tucker and Deng. Houston would get Jimmy, and the Timberwolves would get Willie Cauley-Stein, who's a good. That would be an upgrade in that backup to Cat in the center. So Karl Anthony Towns would be backed up by Willie Cauley-Stein. Zebo would be good backup for Taj. Gibson in the power forward, and Eric Gordon would replace Jimmy Butler. So the T-Wolves, and the reason, like Thibodeau has been saying that he's not blowing it up, he's not going to be part of a rebuild. This is definitely not a rebuild when you've got 2 vets coming in and a young center. The only one here is that the Kings. Why would the Kings do this? Why would they take on Googie Deng's 15 mil for the next 3 years contract, and PJ Tucker's 8 for the next 3? So you need to sweeten that for them. So that would definitely need Houston's first round draft pick, possibly more than that. I'm going to tick it, but I don't think the Kings would come to the party on that unless they've got draft picks. But look at that for a starting 5. Imagine they can get this deal done. Eric Gordon, PJ Tucker go out, bring in Jimmy Butler, and that starting 5 is amazing. Obviously, Carmelo then as a power forward. I don't know why the NBA 2K19 card says he's a small forward. But yeah, power forward there. Jimmy would play as shooting guard / small forward. There's no depth at all. Brandon Knight coming off ACL, he's limited to who knows what he'll play, but he's point guard. So that's your 4th out of 4 guards. So Jimmy's both guard and small forward in this scenario. Marquise Chris, hopefully he can do something because he didn't do anything for the Suns. Nene's the backup for Clint Capella because he'll be able to give him 5 minutes on the bench. Gerald Green's, he'll just shoot the lights out all day. Again, shooting guard / small forward. So there's just no depth. Michael Carter-Williams, hopefully he does better than he did at the Hornets. So I would suggest in this scenario, James Harden, Chris Paul, or Jimmy Butler, 2 of those 3 would remain on the court at all times. If they could get that done, it would be amazing, though. That's a great starting 5. So we've knocked a heap out. So we already had our crosses that we'll put in, and we add in the other crosses that we had. So here we got rid of all of the crosses. It leaves us with 6 possible trade scenarios. So here are the 6 options that Minnesota would be left with. Hassan and Josh Richardson from Miami, PJ and Eric Gordon in numerous ways, plus add in Willie Cauley-Stein possibly there. Kyle Lowry, OG from Toronto, Covington, and Wilson Chandler from Sixers. I don't know that the Sixers would come to the party on that one, though. I don't know that they'd be willing to offload Covington. But if you're getting back Jimmy, then yes. Then the other issue is Wilson Chandler's only just signed his 1 year deal. And whether he's able to sign him, or I don't believe until December, so that may not be an option. The Clippers, do they want to make the Clippers better, considering they'll be fighting that last playoff spot or one of those lower playoff spots against the Clippers? Then that would be Tobias Harris, Dragon Bender, and then the last one there, and the one that makes the most sense, I believe, is the Nets pick. Would be Crabbe and Levert for Jimmy Butler in a straight swap. That there makes the most sense. That's the cleanest, but whether that's the one to happen. Give me your votes on what you believe would be the best trade option, and just add comments and we'll discuss it.